Hello. It's Tuesday. It's January 9 already. Can you imagine? Well, if you write checks to pay your bills, remember, it's the year 2024. We've stepped up from 2023. Fortunately, I don't write checks anymore. And so I don't have to worry about that 24 thing. It is amazing, isn't it? Checks are a thing of the past. Almost. The guy who cuts your grass, if you have a house. You know, he wants to get his check so he can deposit it. And move on to the next one. And hopefully he gets 5 or 6 of those checks in a day. And if he gets home before 8 o'clock, at least with TD Bank, you can photo deposit your checks with your trusty iPhone, if you have one, or with your iPad, if you have an iPad, and you can deposit your checks that way. What a deal. And you get available money the next day. Now, if the check bounces, you get a charge back. Yeah, but that's always the case with a check. Well, it's an interesting day in appellate court situations because, you know, you have President Trump being prosecuted by this wild and crazy prosecutor for things that he did while he was in office. Now, if you can be prosecuted for things while you're in an executive office as a president, he's a unique, only one in the country person, one at a time, that is. And, you know, they're talking about insurrection and all that. You know, he hasn't been charged, much less convicted, you know, in a court of law that he gave a speech. And the way I understand it from things that I've read from neutral sources, that there was a couple of busloads of, you know, really white, you know, right-wing nut jobs. You know, left-wingers and right-wingers are just as bad as left-wingers. You know, they're way extreme on the extreme ends of the political spectrum. Well, left-wingers are like this prosecutors. And the right-wingers are these guys that showed up from, you know, all these Rocky Mountain states that drove into Washington, knew that the president was going to give a speech on January 6th. So they showed up for the speech. And I listened to the speech, you know, from beginning to end twice, I think, maybe more often. You know, just to get a handle on, you know, you got to listen to something like that twice. Anyway, I was thinking of Game of Thrones. We watched Game of Thrones, you know, look forward to every week for the next episode. And, you know, the first 3 seasons were really raunchy, you know, and then it got, you know, when you got into season 4, you know, and more, it got very interesting and not so raunchy, so you could, you know, kind of like pay attention to it without getting grossed out. Anyway, right wing and left wing is equally as terrible as far as I'm concerned. But there was some very, very right wing, people that showed up, 40 or 50 of them. That's a guess. And they, kind of mixed in with the crowd listening to the speech. And then they, before the end of Trump's speech, they migrated along to the Capitol, knowing that the crowd that was in front of the, in the mall in Washington, in front of the monument, so to speak. So they snuck over to the Capitol. Yeah, snuck, but they advanced, before his speech was done. And then the president made it real clear in his speech. He said, now let's, quietly walk down the main, streets and the mall over to the Capitol and, speak what we have to speak, in front of the Capitol. And he made it real clear, quietly and peacefully walk to the Capitol. And of course, these crazies were anything but quiet and peaceful. They were, definitely right-wingers that wanted to advance the situation into the riot that we saw. But, one thing you have to note from all the FBI investigations, or all the stuff that was presented during, this crazy January 6th interrogation, which was left-wing political hack jobs. There was no, how do you have an insurrection and you don't have a pistol? You don't have a BB gun, much less long rifles and cannons. And, if you're going to have an insurrection, you're going to have cannons in the background, lobbing missiles into the cap, nothing. The only shot that was fired was by a Capitol Police person who we've yet to hear who that person was, and shot somebody, during the commotion. And that was done by a Capitol Police person. No one else had any weapons. No knives, no guns, no swords, just flagpoles. And they used, things to break windows and so forth to get in the Capitol building and overcome the Capitol Police. And, the whole thing was very riotous. I call it riotous. But when the people got in the Capitol, they were strolling through there. I mean, you see the video, they're strolling around, walking around like they're invited guests. But the people in front of them broke in the building. The people that were walking around, they didn't break in the building. They just walked through the doors. Because once the bad guys broke in the doors or windows, then they opened the doors from the inside. And the Capitol Police were overcome because there's so many people. And know this, Trump offered Nancy Pelosi, who is, she's in charge of the Capitol and the White, all those grounds and so forth. The Speaker of the House is in charge of securing those things. And she solely has the ability to, engage additional security. And Trump offered to her 2 days before the event. He said, look, there's going to be a lot of people at this thing. I'm willing to commit up to 20,000 National Guards to help secure the whole, government grounds. You really need to, take this invitation. She refused it. No, we're all right. We don't want to have this big police presence. Well, but that's the big police presence is what, gets in the way of having a riot, you dummy. Jeez. Well, these liberals, they don't believe in jails. They don't want any criminals in jails. And now these sanctuary cities, they're saying, oh, yeah, let's defund the police and have, we'll have social officers show up, when the 911 calls are made. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. These people are duking it out, and they're going to have some social officer show. These people are like living in they're protected people. Remember, every time they walk around, they have armed guards securing when they just walk from one place, when they walk to lunch or whenever they go. They have their entourage, and they've got their Capitol Police, Secret Service, whatever the heck it is. They're safe. Everyone else, oh yeah, no guns, no safety. You have a lock on your front and back door, and that's it. But if you have a gun, you've got to have a special permit or whatever. Now, personally, I have in Florida, you're not required to have a permit to acquire a gun. You have to go through the federal, whatever it is, background check, so forth, which is extensive, takes time. And I also, applied for and obtained a concealed weapons permit, which I think I happen to have right here. Let's see if I have it. In my trusty dusty wallet. Here's my wallet. All right, let's pull out all this stuff. Oh, there, look at this. Right in front. I got my Florida driver's license. We all are familiar with what those look like. Let me just stuff the rest of this thing back in here. And here is my, you see what it says up there? Concealed Weapons and Firearms License. I am a card-carrying concealed weapons or firearms license for the state of Florida. And it's reciprocated by, a bunch of other states, and some don't. So if you have a Florida concealed weapons firearm license, you better check the states you're driving through, like New Jersey, because they can lock you up. They find a gun in your car. They have the right for a search and seizure because you look suspicious for some reason or other. This is good until 10/21/27. 27. Crap. I'll be 102 years old by then. Sir, will you please? I'll be lucky if I can hold a gun, at 103. I'm not quite that old. But, I don't know, I'm crowding 80. I'm crowding it. I'm getting god darn close to it. Yep. But I'm not 80. And I'm not 79. And that's as far as I'm going to go on that topic because, there's too many other exciting things to talk about in this world. Anyway, Senate Hall. So anyway, the appellate courts are now, today, as we speak, are hearing arguments on both sides for why the president, Trump, is immune from prosecution for anything he did while he's in office. Now, he's, never been argued except for this, insurgency on the Capitol. Now, why? I listened to that speech. There was, if you listen to that speech in its totality, you don't gap a few words here. Say, well, in this word he said Capitol, and down here in this sentence he said, walk. Yeah. Lawyers are what I like to call wordsmiths. Gunsmiths. Well, you got wordsmiths. They use the English language. They torture it in such a way as to make things sound different than the way they were intended when they were spoken or written. That's what lawyers do. And I was listening to part of this this debate, or interviewing of ambassador. And she made remarks, $8 trillion, Trump, and then, she forgets the, COVID-19, the virus. Remember the virus? And Fauci getting on TV and saying this and saying that. Well, in the background, Trump, made a deal with, a couple of major pharmaceutical manufacturers, which will go unnamed here, only just because I don't want to give the impression I'm promoting any particular pharmacy over another. But, Trump with his advisors, came up and they made a deal with one of the major pharmaceutical companies, based in the United States, with operations and offices basically all over the planet. And he rolled the dice. He basically said, you know what, we gotta go with this COVID-19 thing, because that seems the most likely product of what, infectious diseases come, across from China. I remember he shut down no air traffic from China. Oh my God, the liberals went crazy. Oh, that's racist. What? Everything's racist. No matter what the hell you say, it's racist. That's ridiculous. We cut off the traffic from China because that was the origin of the virus. Smart minds have decided, from them looking at data and information that we don't get a chance to see very often until months or years after the fact. And they even knew the building it came out of, for God's sakes. About just saying, oh, no, it's not a problem. Yeah. Anyway, so Trump essentially, in a sense, before there was all kinds of proof. And by the time you get the proof, you don't need the virus anymore, the injection. You got to go with what the best minds say. And they basically said, COVID-19, that's it. So he went along with that, very early on in this whole, knowledge base of stuff about the virus, and committed, I think 500, no, God darn it, billions, let's just say billions, rather than quantify it, committed billions to, the pharmaceutical companies, two of them, to make to pre-make this viral injection, which would give you some limited immunity from catching this. It would give you antibodies. So if you got sick, it wouldn't prevent you from getting sick. I am trained as a scientist, so I can have a little more precision in the language here. It meant that if you got sick with the virus, the sickness would be less of intensity because having taken the injection, you would have some antibodies in your system. So the way I understand it, in layman's terms, they gave you some RNA, DNA. RNA is like pieces of DNA. They didn't give you live virus. They gave you some RNA of previously live virus, and that would stimulate in your body the making of antigens, so that if you got sick, remember the injections didn't prevent you from getting sick. It made it so that if you did get sick, it wouldn't be as bad because your body would be capable of fighting it, in a sense, because you already got the virus, in a sense. It wouldn't actually give you the virus, but it would give you the antigens, and that would help you if you were to get sick, and it worked. The number of millions of people that were dying dropped. The emergency room attendance started to slow down. And it was better for everyone concerned. So that's off to Trump for being Johnny on the spot and trying to get ahead of this virus thing. Anyway. I see on one of the networks up here, Trump is giving a speech after the immunity hearing arguments wrapped up. So apparently the appellate court hearings have ended. It'd be interesting to see how the appellate court rules. I understand it's a 3-judge panel, and 2 of the judges were named by Obama or earlier Democratic presidents, and 1 judge was put in there by Bush 41, which was a post-year 2000 timing of that. And there, let's face it, the Washington crowd is pretty liberal, so it's hard to get a good hearing when you're in such a liberal. You wish you could be in a relatively neutral area like Ohio, Columbus, but no, it's in Washington where it's 19-1. The Democrat to Republican. Crazy. Anyway, so those hearings wrapped up. I'll be interested to hear, what Trump has to say about that. I'm sure the networks will have snippets of it. If it's, whatever happens, it's going to the Supreme Court. This is appellate court. So now they're hearing arguments. So after they hear arguments, then they go back into their judges separately into each of their judge chambers. I don't know how this particular appellate court works, but they generally have staffs. Each judge has a staff. So they bring the arguments, the oral arguments. They've created consistent, accurate transcriptions of what was argued this morning. And then their staffs pour through those transcripts. And this guy said this, and this judge asked that, and back and forth and that. So they go through all that, contextually, and, look up, case history on, the nuances of what was said, brought up, and so forth. And these appellate, these lawyers that are presenting information to the appellate judges, they will bring up cases. And, Jimmy versus Wilson, one litigant versus the court, and what the outcome was. And that's how our whole system is built on actual case law, rulings on how, certain paragraphs and so forth in the law were interpreted by actual case history. And a very serious case history is what basically creates the whole embodiment of our rules and regulations that control society. And, you just don't have a book of laws and then everyone follows it and everyone interprets it the same way. That is not a realistic society. So as a democratic society, we're the longest historied democratic society, fully democratic society. No monarchies involved, like over in the over the pond, as they say. So we'll see what happens. I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and this is pretty nuanced stuff, And I would imagine that, this is how they frame it. There's going to be a very narrow interpretation. There's no way they're going to convict a president from things that he's done while president. Without anything being adjudicated. And, when you're president, you can't adjudicate everything because you don't know the outcomes necessarily. And you can't start tearing apart every speech, every written anything, action, nuance, or whatever, and haul them up in a court and say, foul, according to you should be convicted of this statutory crime. If that was the case, executive officers, would be powerless in office because they're the attorneys that surround them, and they have attorneys surrounding them to make sure that to the best of their ability, executive officers like Trump or Biden or whatever. Just imagine. They immediately go, they indicted Trump over nothing. You know, there was nothing to those hearings for impeachment. I mean, the House impeached him, which is not removal from office. Impeachment, in the eyes of civilian law, is an indictment. In political law, it's called an impeachment. And then you try the case in the Senate, where the Senate serves as jurors, and the highest officer of the court in the jurisdiction serves as the judge. And then each side provides evidence back and forth, where all 100 senators serve as jurors. And then after those hearings go on, then they rule. Yeah. That's what they would have to do to remove Trump from office, is they would actually have to try those cases. Well, they were not, there was no way they were going to win such a thing. So they just soiled his name with an impeachment. They just tried to dirty his name as the president with 2 impeachments. Goes down in world history. The only president to have 2 impeachments and to be in office. Crazy. Runs for re-election and loses by 44,000 votes over 5 swing states. He lost this state by 11,000 votes, even though there were millions cast. Biden won this state by 8,000 votes, and, you add it all up, it's 44,000 votes over 5 or 6 states. It was, one of the closest elections in modern election history. Now, when Trump won against Hillary Clinton, his election was one of the closest, but it was like 110,000 votes spread over the swing states. So we're a pretty 50-50 country. Now, the problem with, all the Democrats are getting exercised with this particular election, of course, we haven't got a Republican candidate yet. That's all in the preliminary stages. Although Trump is leading in all the polls for, these primary races in various states. In Iowa, he's like 30 or 40 points ahead. And they make noises like, oops. There we go. Oh, sorry. Oh, there it is. That's the latest I got from the Fox News Central. Trump is 52, DeSantis 18, Haley 16, Ramaswamy 7%, and Christie 3%. Christie is just noise. He needs to just go away. He's just someone that wants to criticize Trump till the end of time for some reason. Trump never did anything against him. I don't understand what the animosity is with Christie. He goes through a whole litany of things of why. Now, he was, kissing Trump's ring when he was running because he was hoping to be picked for Attorney General. Oh, he was hoping to be Attorney General, but Trump picked somebody else as Attorney General, and Chris Christie got all exercised because he didn't pick me. So ever since, Trump is a dirtbag. So the reason code for that is why he had a sudden change in thought is because he was not picked to be Attorney General of the United States of America. He probably would have been a good one, but he picked, other people. Barr was a good one. He had someone else before that, and Can't quite remember who that was. But anyway, they keep on saying Haley is, surging. But every time I look at one of these polls, DeSantis is a couple of points ahead of her. Now, she was back down in the Ramaswamy 7%, zone. And she's, quite a while ago surged up to 16. And DeSantis has been somewhere between 18 and 20. And Trump is 52. So that means you add all these up, adds up to 48, assuming you're going to get to 100%. When you got 52, there's only 48 against you. So that's generally a win. Somehow or other, you got to knock Trump down to some lower number to be. Trump is an interesting character. At this point, I want him reelected personally, just so you know, because you're better off now or 4 years ago. Well, I was better off 4 years ago. Inflation was way down. The cost of things was way down. And gasoline was half the price. We were drill, for oil independence. Our president, turned off. We had this much left of, the pipeline going up into Canada. And he stopped it. He pulled the permits. Now, how stupid is that? And then he turns around and permits the gas pipeline going up through, Europe, leading to Russia. Now, why would you, open up the floodgates for that one and turn off the Keystone Pipeline, which services the United States? Which basically we are buying, the way I understand it, we get 42% of our, oil product, raw material, from Canada, okay? 42% of our energy importing is from Canada, not Saudi Arabia. We get like 6 or 7% from Saudi Arabia. And Trump was, with the Keystone Pipeline and with drill, and a bunch of other things, we were going to, become oil, energy independent. We don't need these Arabs and, the way they say it. We don't need this international oil from South America, which is a very, the crude oil. And from my undergraduate studies, I specialized in petrochemical fractional distillation. How about that? You see, there's an oil refinery flashing in front of me. Whoops, on this laptop I have here. And when you get the crude oil, which comes in barrels or pipelines, the crude oil from South America, from Venezuela particularly, is of the worst, the thickest tar kind of crude oil that you can get. So it requires, a little more delicate touch when you try to fractionally distill crude oil that is very thick. Because fractional distillation means you basically boil it in a boiling chamber, and then you got a pipe that comes up like this, and then along the way you have, the pipeline pipes coming off. And those different pipes are, like kerosene, gasoline, known as isooctane which comes off at a certain level because of the boiling point of that part of the fractional distillation. So the very low temperature stuff. So what's left after the fractional distillation is the sludge. Well, we're starting off, with South American raw material. It's very thick. The crude is very thick. It's hard to, it moves out of the ground very slowly, or slowly compared to, what it's like if you have a, here it is right here. Let's take a look at it. See that? This is the refinery in the background, if you can. Whoops. Let me save it. And then we'll get it over here. It'll come over here. Shrink that down. Anyway, so the picture will pop. There it is. Amazing. We got all this stuff. Part of it's going through the network, part of it's going through wires. It's pretty complicated. I have all these black cloths all over surrounding my little tiny studio thing here that's 6 feet wide by 2.5 feet deep. And the reason why is there's all kinds of wires going around here. And you look at that and say, oh my God, what is this? Well, you keep doing stuff like this and it keeps your mind young. You got to be busy doing something. So, if you look at all the wires, the way it is now, it looks like, oh my God, one wire at a time, it's not a big problem. But, you put this wire in here and that goes in there. And so it's no big deal if you understand the technology. But if you look at this refinery, you see you got this big central core that comes up, and then you got these pipes that come out at certain levels. Well, those different pipes that come off at separate levels is how they fractionally distill the crude oil. So you got a system where this crude oil comes into a boiling chamber, and then it boils. I mean, literally. It stinks like hell if the gases get out. But when you get up at the top, which is the highest temperature, like 100 and, I'm trying to think, like 180 degrees, something like that, Fahrenheit. You get, things like jet fuel, kerosene, isooctane. That doesn't count. So, anyway, that's what a fractional distillation. And then it comes across over here, and then pipes lead it over, to another part of this distillation process, which further refines the product to separate, kerosene from jet fuel number 2, for example. And very close in temperatures, boiling points of those two biological products that come out of the ground. And jet fuel number 2 is used in jet airplanes today, in these jets. It doesn't require the fast burning rate of isooctane. And isooctane, the burning rate is slowed down because they add an ingredient to isooctane, so that you end up with gasoline. Gasoline is not isooctane. gasoline contains a lot of isooctane, and then it contains a little bit of other things, so that the burning rate is slowed down a bit, so you don't have what is commonly called engine knock when the engine runs, kind of rough. But some of these high-performance engines that we have today have to have a burning rate that's very precise. So then you decide whether you want high test or low test. Those kinds of things are created in these refineries. And we have two big ones, one in Houston and one in Louisiana. So one in Texas, I'm going to say one major plant in Texas and one major plant in Louisiana. And we haven't built a new refinery in, 25, 30 years. And one reason for that is the environmentalists won't allow it to be built. They won't get permits because, they're all a bunch of tree huggers. I mean, I agree in keeping the air, clean. There's nothing that makes me more upset than being behind one of these tractor trailers that has a diesel power plant, and they step on their accelerator pedal, and this huge fume of black smoke and soot and carbon monoxides and carbon dioxides and all the things the tree huggers hate. But, they let those tractor trailers run like crazy because that's what delivers their Wheaties to them every morning for breakfast, And it's true. I mean, a huge percentage of everything that we consume as populations around the country, servicing 340 million people, thereabouts. The trucking industry is what moves that around from the factories to the pharmacies, to the, the grocery stores. Anyway, so we haven't had a refinery built the country keeps growing, and we can't get any refinery capacity. So it's oftentimes, including today, that we're importing refined gasoline that's coming in those big black tankers that we buy from other countries. We're having to buy refined gas. Our own environmentalist people won't give the permits when major companies that would build fractional distillation plants, they can't get the permits because you have all this stinky stuff coming out of these plants. Now they try to control that, and they burn off the stinky stuff. So you always see some flames coming out of some various branches of a fractional distillation plant. That's just to get rid of, they don't want unburnt gases to be emitted because it would create a hazard to our society. So it's better to have some carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide and carbon itself come out of these refineries than to have the stink and these gaseous materials floating around in our atmosphere. It's like trading one poison for another, so to speak. Anyway, so we went from, this Supreme Court stuff. I don't see how it's possible that the appellate court, now they may rule in one direction strictly because of the politics of it, because they're in largely liberal jurisdiction. But then it would get handed to the Supreme Court, and I don't see they would reverse it. I mean, we could turn around. The Republicans could turn around and sue Biden for the open border. You know, all these bad guys are streaming in our borders right now, right this second. And he could be, you know, cited for treason for this invasion of enemy characters, and being, and they say there's 6, 7, 800,000 that they've counted. Well, there's like 50 or 60,000 that are jumping the border, in camouflage gear and fatigues, and those are called gotaways in the vernacular of the media or the Border Patrol people. The gotaways are people that they know they've tracked with their sensors and cameras. Call them sensors, and they see them because they have, cameras and sensors, that people are watching those monitors all over the border in every border city. And there are hundreds of thousands of gotaways. If there are 3 million that are counted, there's 800,000 that are gotaways that the Border Patrol people saw. They made record of it, but they can't get them because they don't have enough people to get them. And what the hell is the sense in getting them? Because, these Border Patrol people are going to let them loose anyway. They get their name and address. You think they're coming in? Just think of it. You got, you take some slug of time, between October and now. You got 1 million people that have been admitted to this country. And what did they get? They got their name and address and a phone number. And who knows, the proof of that. You think they're coming with a copy of their water bill to verify their address? You think they're coming in with immunization records on, all the shots that the parents and the children have taken? They're coming in with, wet shoes and shirts. They don't have any immunization. They probably don't have any immunization, much less their records. So they're coming in our country, going into our schools with no records whatsoever. I mean, I remember, Brennan and Daniel and Lee and Robin. I got 4 kids. And before they could get in the 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 5th grade, whatever grade, they had to have a complete immunization record. And if you didn't have the complete, doses of whatever, you had to show that you're going to get the next dose, whatever. And next year they see to make sure the kid got that shot. These people are jumping the border and they have no immunization. We don't know whether they want to follow the rules of our country. My theory is if they're willing to break the law to get in the country, what makes you think they're going to follow the laws of the country? Okay? Think about that. If they're willing, they know they're breaking the law, jumping the border. They're climbing over barbed wire. They're going across rivers. They're taking their own personal risk, traveling thousands of miles, mostly from Central and South America. They're not Mexicans, largely. They have no immunization. We don't know what kind of diseases they're coming in here with. We may have an outbreak of polio, for God's sakes, or some diseases we're not immunized to defeat. So, someday, not in the distant future, we may have outbreaks of some really bad diseases that float around, in Africa, for example. Now there's a bunch of Africans coming over. Well, you go into the core of Africa, these people, they live in a totally different kind of society than we live in. And I'm not being, we can't open the doors and let everybody in. We wouldn't have a country. Our forefathers even said a country without borders is no country at all, because our country will self-destruct from the inside out. We're worried about China and Russia. They wouldn't have to fire a single bullet, and this country would completely collapse, because just from the economies of this, how are we going to feed and clothe? And, if they buy clothes, where the hell do you think they're getting them from? To a certain degree, they get handouts. But, aside from that, they have no immunization, so they will eventually get immunized, because parts of our society will require it. Well, where do you think the immunization's coming from? It's coming from our medical system, and we have to pay for it. Someone pays for it. It doesn't grow on trees. How about food? How about housing? Who the hell's going to feed these people? They're taking food stuffs that I might get. I'm being crazy, but there's only so much food in society, and they're eating. All of a sudden, you have. You've added another state of Ohio. When you add up all these people, it's like adding another state. And it's all on the idea that, these people that have their hands out, God bless them, they're going to vote Democratic probably, or largely. And somehow or other, they're going to get them the power of the vote. That's the end game. Now, it may not be this election, it may not be the next election, but the election next, they're eventually going to be allowed to vote by some of these places, and that'll change. We're at 49-51. Congress separates by two representatives. Out of the whole 435, there's just two. You talk about in equilibrium. Well, if you start adding, millions and millions of these people, it's gonna change the balance of power, and the Democrats think it's gonna change to them. So that's the end of my lecture for today. We'll pick this up again tomorrow. I'm looking at my little stopwatch there, and I've been yakking away for what looks like 59 minutes and 8 seconds. I see it up on here. As soon as it went live, I hit the time clock here, because it's good, because this is a TriCast. It's live broadcast on Facebook Live, on Twitter, or the X channel, whatever, and YouTube Live. So it's going to all three of them live right now, all 59 minutes and 42 seconds worth. So that's pretty cool, huh? But after about an hour and 10 minutes, they start to, all of a sudden they pull the plug on you. So I like to keep these, at an hour. And that way you've heard enough of me, and I'll come back to you tomorrow. So I wish you a great day, and I'll stop talking, and we'll see you tomorrow.